Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Cioffi. Welcome to Weather in 5 days in 5 minutes on this mostly beautiful Sunday. There are some minor issues going on in a few places, and we're going to talk about that. We're also going to look at Tropical Storm Dorian, which is east of the Lesser Antilles, and what we think is going to happen with that. And also this broad low that is sitting off the Florida coast and continues to sit off the Florida coast. And what we think what's going to happen with that particular system. But first, let's take care of the local business here and look at the weekend, the rest of this weekend and into next week. A lot of dry air over the Northeast from New England down into the northern mid-Atlantic states. But you'll notice that we've got clouds to the south. The stalled frontal boundary remains intact here, right along the coast. By the way, this is the weather system that's off the Florida coast that we're keeping an eye on. But today, our surface high has moved out to the east. So we've got a bit of a northeast flow that's coming in. And sometimes, under certain conditions, you could wind up having a fairly miserable day in a situation like this. But there is so much dry air that covers the Great Lakes to New England that it's really overpowering the low clouds that are trying to come in, low and some middle clouds that are trying to come in from the east. In the meantime, you look to the south from North Carolina northeastward, those clouds are moving southwest to northeast. So as long as they are going in this direction, we really don't have anything to worry about with regards to any kind of heavier overcast or rain. The only issue with regards to rainfall is there are some showers, and you can see them here on the regional radar view offshore. Very narrow band. They're moving from east to west, and it's possible that parts of the New Jersey shore might see a brief sprinkle or shower as one of these ocean uh, uh, areas comes in, one of these little blobs from off the ocean comes in. And then usually if that happens, it'll just completely fall apart. The vast majority, 99.9% of you from northeastern Virginia through Maryland, south central and southeastern Pennsylvania, Delaware, the rest of New Jersey, New York State, New England, Long Island. Did I miss anybody? Won't see a drop of rain today and should enjoy no worse than partly sunny skies. And as far as the weather going forward, that high actually rebuilds back westward because of what's going on out in the Atlantic. You have this upper low that is off the New England coast, and that is going to move into southeastern Canada. While it does that, we get a big high that develops over New England again. So we're going to see this dry air and low humidity last, I think, at least into Tuesday before the next cold front approaches. This may be our only chance for showers this week on Wednesday. And it's not a big chance here. This is a weak front that's coming through Wednesday evening with maybe a shower or thunderstorm. Thursday and Friday look good, warm, sunshine with temperatures in the 80s. And then another weak front could be setting us up for some great weather for the Labor Day holiday weekend. So for the rest of today, high temperatures only in the 70s, no worse than partly sunny skies. And then tomorrow should be partly to probably mostly sunny in some places, and temperatures again mostly in the 70s, and will be holding in the 70s, maybe getting up close to 80 in some places on Tuesday with a mix of sun and clouds. All right, let's take a look. First off, the system off the east coast of Florida remains very weak. It's a broad low. And in fact, when we look at the surface map, we've got this gradient here, this high to the north, getting a nice breeze coming in from off the ocean. There's your stationary boundary that is right off the southeast coast of the United States. And there's just broad low pressure here that extends down to off the Florida coast. There's a weak low when we look at the wind field off the Florida coast. But we don't see a concentration of thunderstorms in and around the circulation center. Starting to see a little bit of an increase in thunderstorm activity this morning near where the low center might be. But in all, this remains a very, very disorganized system. And we're not expecting this to do very much. And in fact, when we, with respect to the wind flow along the East Coast, even if this does develop, and I want to emphasize this, even if we wind up seeing this develop into a tropical storm, You can't really bring a storm up the East Coast when you have an upper air flow that's like this, where the winds aloft are blowing pretty much from west to east all the way down into North Carolina. You've got this very deep next trough that's coming into the plains, and you've got a northwest flow up in southeastern Canada and over toward Nova Scotia. So anything that forms out here goes goodbye. So I'm not concerned, nor should you be concerned. And in fact, when we look at the hurricane model guidance, all of the model guidance takes everything up to the northeast. Now, the furthest ones to the west bring the system close to Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. We'll probably take a closer look at that later today. First off, something has to form in order for it to be a real threat. Otherwise, it's just going to be low pressure, broad low that's not going to stand out from anything else that's out there in the across North America. So much for the low off the East Coast. Now let's take a look at Dorian. And Dorian is out here in the tropical Atlantic, heading for the Lesser Antilles. It remains fairly weak. It's still only top winds of 40 miles an hour on the 8 a.m. advisory. Now, we have noticed that some thunderstorm activity has been increasing here, but among the issues that we have with respect to this tropical storm, first off, all across the tropical Atlantic, all through here, dry air. And Dorian just kind of seems to be living inside one area where the atmosphere is fairly moist. So we have to look for the possibility that some of that dry air could get entrained into the circulation, keeping it weak. If it stays weak and doesn't develop in the next 36 or 48 hours, then it's going to head into the Eastern Caribbean. If it stays weak, it's going to take a track further to the south and continue on a more westerly course. Also, once it gets into the Eastern Caribbean, you've got to deal with what could be increasing strong upper air winds that will be tearing it apart. If Dorian can organize into a stronger system, that is going to tend to favor a track a bit more to the north. That's where the Hurricane Center is going with this at the moment. I have my doubts in my head about whether that's going to happen or not. We have seen these small systems before thrive and intensify fairly rapidly sometimes because they're kind of living in their own world. But you have to sort of see it get underway to gain any kind of confidence. So for now, just sort of watching the satellites and radars, the Hurricane Center tracks on this, the Hurricane Track Model guidance has actually shifted further south from yesterday, taking it more over the southern half of the islands and then northwestward toward Puerto Rico and the southern shores of the Dominican Republic. But how much of a storm are you going to have by that time remains to be seen. I do have a tight satellite view here somewhere. And I guess maybe I don't. Okay, I thought oh, here it is. So here's this satellite loop from this morning. It's holding its own, definitely at the very least a minimal tropical storm. Starting to see a little bit of convection increasing, but again, this storm is only about 150 or so miles wide from south to north and from east to west. So we're not talking about a big system at all here. And there's not a whole lot going on. You don't see a very rich tropical field that this storm is surrounded by. So that dry air is an issue. But right now, the upper air winds remain fairly favorable. And finally, here's the Hurricane Center's forecast track as a tropical storm. They do continue to show the possibility that it could strengthen into a hurricane as it gets into the Eastern Caribbean. And they are favoring that track more toward the northwest, toward the Dominican Republic and Haiti. But again, what will we have by the time it gets there? There's a whole lot to be worked out. And we're going to try and do that this evening on our regular YouTube live stream, by the way, at we'll shoot for 6 o'clock Eastern time. So we'll look for that. We'll have all the latest information on all the tropical systems and our own local weather going forward. In fact, we'll look at weather all up and down the East Coast. And that's again at 6 o'clock on my YouTube live stream. Thanks for being here on Weather in 5. By the way, consider supporting by hitting the Become a Supporter button. It's just $1 a month. For those of you who are on the weather app, it really helps to keep the app, the ads on the app to an absolute minimum. And I appreciate those of you that have done that. But if you haven't, just consider it. It's just $1 a month. And if you are perhaps more inclined to get into some really serious weather stuff, you can jump on my Patreon platform. That's on that's only $2 a month, and you get a lot of extra stuff, including extra live streams, extra posts, and you can talk to me by messaging me at any time. And you can get the Patreon platform is patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Cioffi. I have links all over the place for that. Have a great day, everybody. See you tomorrow on Weather in 5, and see you tonight on YouTube.